Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on wealth creation. I'm Shelley, and I'm going to be talking to you for about 30 minutes. So we haven't got much time today. I'm going to crack into it. We're here to talk about growing wealth and how you can just get started on it and why you should get started on wealth creation. So what we're going to cover off today, why do we need to grow wealth? What are those wealth building principles? How much do you actually need for retirement? And how does that wealth plan kind of tie in with that? How to adjust your plan for your unique circumstances. And we're going to finish up with some Q&A. We've had a couple of questions come through ahead of the session today, but there is also a Q&A chat box. So if you think of a question along the way and I haven't answered that burning question that you're wanting to ask, pop that into the Q&A box at the top and hopefully we'll have enough time at the end. So I'm aiming to talk for about 20 minutes and then we'll leave 10 minutes for questions and answers at the end. As always, today's presentation is just for information purposes. If you're really wanting some specific wealth or financial advice, you need to really come and see us for that. So today is intended just to be for general information, but I do hope you get a lot out of the session. So a little bit about me. I am a financial advisor. I have been at Enable Me as a coach for over 9 years now. There is pretty much nothing I haven't seen. I'm also a property investor and I've been accused of being a straight talker. I had a meeting with some clients for the first time yesterday and they basically said to me, "We're here so you can be brutally honest to us, Shelley." So if you're into brutal honesty and someone who's just going to say it as it is, then I'm your gal. But really my job is to get the best outcomes for my clients. You know, we live in this world where it's not easy to get ahead. New Zealand particularly is a beautiful country to live in, but all of the things that make New Zealand amazing are also all of the things that make it really expensive. We're far away from trouble and yeah, it takes a long time for things to get here and there aren't many people here. So it means that it's an expensive country to live in. So my job is to help my clients get ahead faster and kind of hack the system in New Zealand, reach their financial potential. So when talking about wealth, why should we prioritize creating wealth? For some of us, we really desire to leave a legacy for our children or for our grandchildren or for those generations to come. For some, it really represents security both now and into retirement. For a lot of people, they're actually trying to solve a retirement gap or an issue that we have with not that they're tracking to not have enough for retirement. So growing wealth is to kind of address a shortfall. For some of us, it's to create choice. And in my mind, financial freedom is having choice. So, you know, that might be the choice whether or not you take that really stressful promotion or whether you retain more of a work-life balance. It could be the ability to retire early and spend time with your grandchildren. So options. But crucially, it's about funding retirement, which for some of us might look a little different, but ultimately there's going to come a time in your life where you don't want to work anymore. For some of us, that comes sooner than others, but we're going to have to fund that somehow if we want to live the same lifestyle that we live while we're earning money. So we need to create wealth. So I'm going to give you some stats now around how New Zealanders feel around their finances. And this has been taken from the Financial Services Council. They do a lot of research and a lot of work and a lot of surveying of New Zealanders. And one of their stats that scares me a little bit is that only 44% of Kiwis actually feel like they're ready for retirement, which means 66% are not. 54% of Kiwis, actually it's affecting them mentally. They're worrying about money on the regular. Possibly they're losing sleep. Possibly money is causing an issue in their relationship. When money is a worry, it feeds into every area of your life, your relationships, your sleep, your work, and the productivity at your work. So it actually comes at a cost to our economy in that regard. 70% of Kiwis feel like they have to work past retirement age, which at the moment is age 65. That may be lifting in the future. We don't know, to 67. It certainly has done in other countries. a little sad because that's a massive majority of us that are feeling like, well, we're just going to have to work until we die. And when people come to see me for that first session, I always say to them, look, what do you think will happen if you continue to do what you're doing right now? What do you think will happen? And the number of times people say to me, I'm just going to have to work until I die. To me, that's sad. And there is another way. So I don't like these statistics, and I want to do something about addressing these statistics to make them better, empower Kiwis about finances and retirement and money. So there are some misconceptions around wealth. When you hear the word wealth, it sort of springs to mind the ultra wealthy, the high net worth individual driving around in a really nice car, living in a really nice house, going on amazing holidays. A lot of people think you need to have money to make money, which is true, but it's not necessarily the full picture. For some of us, there's a lot of fear, and investing just feels like a bit of a gamble. I think a lot of people, particularly, they either saw their parents or they lost money themselves in the share market crash back in the 80s, and they feel like it's just another form of getting a lotto ticket or chucking it all on red. So there's that misconception. Some people think wealth creation requires a high degree of financial literacy, that it is limited to someone who wears a suit or who has a white collar, or is of a specific gender possibly, but it's really not. And I think there's also that misconception that it's going to take up a lot of your time to manage your wealth. Yes, you should be an active investor, but really we want to not set and forget, but we want to get an investment plan that we know is going to serve us, that will kind of happen by default in the background. And I don't actually want you looking at it every day. For the same reason I tell my clients, just step away from your KiwiSaver. Do not look at it. It's bouncing all over the place at the moment. The biggest risk of investment is actually you. It's you and your emotions. So we don't want you to be checking in on your investments absolutely every single day, nor spending too much time around any kind of wealth strategy or investment, because if it's taking up too much of your time, it's a bit of a pain. And you're not going to want to continue doing that. So there needs to be an element of it, your investment strategy being a little arm's length. So, as you know, it is a noisy old world out there at the moment. I hope very much so that you are not one of those people who has notifications from the Herald or stuff.co.nz flashing up on your phone. That's just going to add to your stress. If it's not an actual war, it's a war of words happening at the moment. We're in an economic slump, and the media, if it bleeds, it leads. They love to report this stuff. It makes for good headlines. The budget was a tough one. There's OCR announcements happening. There's a lot going on, and it's noisy. So I want you to understand what's going on, and it's really powerful understanding, how the economic cycle works and where we're at with that economic cycle. But I don't want you to get stressed about all of this. Really, and this is something that I say to my clients time and time and time again, just retain your composure. Control what you can control. Let it be known, we can control not many things in this life, but there are things around your money that you can effect despite all of the noise that is happening around you. So the superpower is go inside yourself, understand your strengths and what you are capable of achieving, what the opportunities are that are open to you, and forget about the rest. So what's the wealth creation strategy? I like to say to my clients, we don't start with the wealth creation strategy. We actually start with you and your happy life. What do you need to spend to live your best life? We only have one, unless you believe in reincarnation, but we've got this life, right? And what does that look like for you? And I get different walks of life coming through my office door, and a financial plan or a wealth creation plan for one will be totally different to the next. So we start with, what are your needs. And let's actually quantify what those needs are on an annual basis, on a monthly basis. Do you need to go out for dinner once a month? Do you need to play golf? And that's really important. Do we need to book an annual holiday? Is it really important for you to raise your children and get them through a really good education? What are those personal financial goals that hold meaning to you? Once we understand that, we start to quantify all of that and build a personalized financial plan that serves your personal financial goals. So once we have that nailed down and we understand that personal financial plan, we can then kind of go, are we going to be okay if this is the plan, or have we got a bit of an issue here? And if we have an issue, how are we going to address that issue, and what types of wealth creation do we need to do? So the wealth creation strategy then starts to inform the types of investments that you might consider. And a common question to me when people come to see me for the first time will be, I'm so confused. You know, there's a lot of information out there at the moment. There's these finfluencers that talk about shares and digital currencies and all these different types of investment, angel investing and all these different forms of investments. And I'm so confused, Shelley. What should I do? So we go back to the basics. What are your goals in life? How much are they going to cost? Let's get that personal financial plan in place, which then drives the way we invest. So any wealth creation plan must start with a strong foundation. So everything that you see in blue is what we need to address. So if we haven't addressed all of these little boxes in blue, then we need to plug those gaps as a starting point, because you can't just invest randomly. So if you have poor money habits, let's think about what they are and how you might like to address getting better money habits. What are your goals? And it never ceases to amaze me how many people, when I say to them, what is your vision or what is your goal for the future? They tell me they don't know. Well, do you want to travel? Do you want to help your kids on the property ladder? Like, what are those personal financial goals? And let's start to put numbers around that and a bit of a pathway to achieving those goals. So goal setting is really important. It's giving you something to strive for. If you're not striving or moving positively towards a goal that appeals to you, it's going to be hard to stick to a budget or a money plan. So get your cash flow management right. That I'm talking about the way you manage your money on a daily basis. We spend just as much as we breathe, you know, money is coming out, going in and coming out every day, going out every day, but coming in less regularly. But the way we manage our money is really, really important. We want to get really good systems to ensure that you are saving first and that you just make it work with whatever's left. Debt management, if you've got short-term debt, that is your first port of call. I never want to see short-term debt for any of my clients. Address that with priority, please. Structuring your mortgage, your home mortgage correctly to save on interest to the bank, but also to open up opportunity to do other things. So if you have a home mortgage, we need to get rid of that as quickly as possible. Your home is a lifestyle asset. I want you to get mortgage free because ultimately that's where you need to land when you don't want to work anymore. I don't want you having a mortgage when you want to finish work. So we've got to restructure, get a really optimal mortgage strategy, pay that home mortgage off as fast as possible. And in terms of insurance and KiwiSaver, I just want to make sure that the financial products that you have are serving you. So the plan starts by knowing where we're starting, where we need to land, and what is our runway. How many years have we got left of earning? We want to consider how you behave around money. And for some of us, we've been dealt a better hand than others. So the first port of call, we've got to get a monthly surplus. We've got to get you saving more in than out each month. If you're not saving at the moment, that is, again, the first thing that we need to address. It always flabbergasts me when people say, Shelley, I want to start investing. And I'm like, great. But you also need to be saving before you can invest, because what are you going to invest? So we need to start creating that surplus so that you have savings to then invest or pay the mortgage off faster. Tracking your spend can help. we've got to get rid of the family home mortgage. So let's optimize your mortgage. Let's restructure that. Let's save on that blinking compound interest that we're paying to the bank. It's just going to save you hundreds and thousands of dollars. So if you have a home mortgage, we prioritize that as our first port of call before we talk about investment strategies. I'm going to go through these next graphs pretty quickly, just in terms of timing. But what's scary and what this graph is reflecting here, the blue line that you see, the average age in New Zealand to get on the property ladder is now 35 because it takes so long to get that deposit. The average mortgage term in New Zealand is 30 years. So that math doesn't really math. That means your first home, you're going to get mortgage free on it by age 65. And then what you see here is that yellow line being your Kiwi saver, because if you're paying your mortgage off and you're not really able to save, then we're just relying on our Kiwi saver and maybe some minimal savings we've accumulated. That gives us a wealth gap, a retirement shortfall. So how to address that? Well, one of the things is pay the mortgage off faster. That improves our baseline and gives us extra saving time to get us out a little bit further. But what I really want to get all of my clients out to is age 90. That's the gold standard. So if we pay our mortgage off 10 years faster, we save or invest more, but it's your post-retirement wealth management plan. So making sure that that money isn't just sitting in the bank, that it's actually working harder for you in an investment sense to make sure that it grows and that your savings actually stretch further all the way out to age 90. So there are lots of different types of wealth options out there. And this is kind of, where clients get a bit confused. Should I be doing a managed fund? What about crypto? What is an ETF, Shelley? Term deposits, I've got some of those. Should I be doing individual shares or should I buy a business? All of these have their place as part of a possible wealth strategy for you. But again, it depends on what is your personal financial plan in terms of what investments we decide to actually put in place for you. So any wealth plan, it has to be tailored for your individual circumstances. A wealth plan for you is going to look totally different to the next person. So really, really important we understand what is your happy life spend? What are those bigger things that you're trying to achieve in life? When do you want to retire? And tailor that personal financial plan to then understand our wealth plan and what investments we should be kind of getting into. Absolutely, any wealth plan should be well diversified. We are never putting all eggs in one basket. It must be spread across a range of different types of investment that serve you and that serve your cash flow needs as your life progresses. I mean, any plan, any financial plan, as well as any wealth plan, needs to be subject to change. Life happens. It does. We're like that the older you get, the likelier that curveball that is going to happen. So we can't have a wealth plan that is fixed. And so I would consider a fixed wealth plan to be a really long-term term deposit. I mean, you can break it, but you're going to lose a lot of those returns that you might have had. So a term deposit I would be describing as a very inflexible wealth plan. We want to embed flexibility, and any plan needs to be able to change. And having that diversification allows us to lean into different types of investments when different things are happening in the market, if that makes sense. All of my clients must have an emergency fund. Once you understand your annual spend, I want you to have a minimum of 6 months worth of that annual spend. Again, that rainy day thing will happen. So we must have either a line of credit embedded in our mortgage reduction plan, like a revolving credit facility or something like that, or it's savings in the bank if you are mortgage free. So we've got to have that buffer as part of our wealth plan. Backing up the wealth plan, we just want to make sure that our spending habits are really healthy. So you might have a really good diversified investment portfolio, but if your spending habits are really poor and you haven't addressed that, you're likely to be eating into that investment at too fast of a rate. So money mindset and spending habits really does come into that wealth plan as well. If you're not controlling your spend, doesn't matter how much wealth you create, you're just going to whip through it really quickly. Having a wealth mindset is really powerful, and I sometimes call that an opportunity mindset too. A lot of us have a lot of fear around investing, and that can lead to a loss of opportunity. And like anything, a wealth plan should always be founded upon a strong financial foundation. So when we're talking about how much you might need towards retirement, if you do that calculation, and you can jump on sorted.org, you might have a fancy spreadsheet, or you can come along to Enable Me and we'll help you calculate your retirement number. If we find your retirement gap is more than 300,000, so even though we accelerate your mortgage, and even though you're going to save and invest as much as you possibly can before age 65, it's going to mean we're likely to use leverage. And for a lot of us, KiwiSaver is just not going to be enough. So why leverage? Why do I like leverage? Here's a really good example of, if you're lucky enough, or you've had a windfall of 160,000 in a managed fund on a growth rate after fees and tax, that's going to give you an extra 9,600 a year. Amazing. But say you took that same 160 and invested that into an $800,000 investment property, the capital growth rate on that property is possibly, obviously, there's no guarantee with any investments moving forward, but comparing apples with apples and knowing that the historical capital growth rate has been around about 6%, the return on that annually, that capital value is going to be 48,000. So quite the difference. I'm going to skip past that slide because I know that we're running a little bit short on time and I want to answer questions. But a lot of clients say to me, you know, I think I'll wait on investment. You know, I know that I need to do something. I think I'm going to have a retirement shortfall. I might need to use leverage to actually bridge that retirement shortfall, but I really want to wait until I get back from that holiday, and I'm going for this promotion next year, and I think it's going to really be good because my pay is going to go up. And I feel like the market's a bit flat, so there's no rush. There is never a good time to invest. There is never a good time to get started. We just get our plan in place and we do it. And like good old Warren Buffett, someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted that tree a really long time ago. Don't wait, just execute. There is a cost to not doing it. So key takeouts from the slides today are, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Are we on track to actually be okay and to have financial freedom or be sorted for retirement? How hard do our investments have to work for us? And what are our timeframes? What is our runway here? And our tolerance for risk versus the risk that we actually need to take to grow our wealth to the point where we're going to be sorted. And as always, I think if this is feeling outside your remit and you're feeling like you need expert advice, get in touch with a trusted financial planner. There's a lot to this. There's a lot of calculation that needs to happen. I'm not saying it's not doable on your own, but working with an expert is likely to help you to outperform more than just muddling along and doing it yourself. So you've listened to me for, 24 minutes, you lucky things, but I'm not the only person at Enable Me. There is a huge breadth of experience, a huge breadth of qualifications sitting in behind. The people you're seeing on the screen here are all Enable Me financial coaches. They have expertise across banking, property. There are chartered accountants. There's even a psychologist. One of our coaches has a psychology degree. I feel like we all get that just working at Enable Me. But my point is there is a huge team behind us here at Enable Me, and we'll find the right coach to support you on your wealth creation journey. So I'd like to extend a special offer for you to come in and see us. So for those of you who book by midnight Friday the 13th, midnight, I'd like to extend the invitation for you to come along and have what we call an initial consultation with one of our coaches. It could be with me, or it could be with one of the other coaches here, whoever feels like the right fit for you. The full cost for that 90-minute consultation is normally $400. Super duper special because you've watched this today, $99. If you don't get to book by midnight Friday, you can still come and see us. You'll just pay $149 for that session, and you must book that in before the end of June to secure that discount. So I am going to hand over to Emma, or let Emma, the producer, come on and ask me some questions. We have 5 minutes, Emma.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise, Shelley. We now
I'm just
have a
going
little bit of time
to,
for a few questions.
yeah, sorry, I'll just get that QR
Awesome.
code back up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to everybody who sent through a question. There were some really good ones before the session today. So the first question I have is, I'm going to get my two daughters, age 13 and 20, started with investing in shares. Would Sharesies be the best option to start them off?
Sharesies. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sharesies is a great way to help them to understand how shares work. It's such a nebulous concept. I was trying to explain this to my 13-year-old son, and I was like, it's a piece of a company that you buy, and then there's a value to that piece of that company, and it goes up and it goes down. And he kind of looked at me blankly. So I grabbed $25 and I set up a Sharesies account, and I asked him, well, here are the list of companies. Who would you like to invest in? Which company would you like to invest in? And he saw Hallensteins, and of course, Leisure Club hoodie for a 13-year-old boy. So we invested in Hallensteins, and funnily enough, he's had a 54% return on his Hallenstein shares. So shame it wasn't on 2,500. It was only on $25, but it was really good for him to see that. So absolutely, from an education point of view, you can play around. You might get some wins and some losses. I probably wouldn't, if you're really relying on, growth within their investments to say get them through uni or to buy their first car or their first home, I probably wouldn't do Sharesies for that, or possibly do the managed fund version of that, and get an expert onto it and just cop the fee. But it's a really good place to play, and a really good place to educate them around shares.
Thank you for sharing that, Shelley.
No
You've always got
worries.
to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, you do.
And the next question is property investment essential for building wealth?
I mean, it's one option, right? And as you saw with the little circular slide, there are lots of different forms of investment. And I think I've made it clear in terms of leverage. Property, I want to be part, I think has its place because of leverage being so great in terms of it outperforms a lot of the other asset classes, just because you're buying a higher value asset and keeping the gain on that higher value asset. But it would form for me part of a diversified kind of portfolio of investments. For a lot of my clients, it's their KiwiSaver is part of their kind of investment portfolio. They might get one or two or more investment properties in there as well, because they've got that leverage. And then they might be leaning into buying a business or setting up a managed fund. So properties has its place, and it can be great. You have to be careful to buy the right property. But I would say, no, it's not the only form of investment out there. There are lots of different forms of investment.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question.
Okay.
So the final question is it better to invest in inheritance into an investment property or funds?
This is one that comes up a lot. And some of us, often it's not great circumstances, but we might come into some money through a parent or grandparent passing away, and we want to make the most of that money. And I think I often say, let's invest this inheritance really well, because you want that to kind of almost honor the memory of your loved one. And you kind of feel good that it's going in the right direction, and that it's going to grow for you. And I think in their grave they would feel really good about that. So inheritance happens a lot, and often we get asked, how do I invest it? Again, it does come down to your specific financial plan and the goals that you're trying to achieve. But if you've got a home mortgage, I would be seriously considering putting the bulk of it towards that. I would do that though via a revolving credit or an offset kind of type account, so that you could possibly draw that back again. For some of my clients, depending on the quantum of the inheritance, we might do a little bit of both. If you have a family home and there isn't a mortgage on it, you could possibly use a little bit of security or the equity in your family home plus a little bit of the deposit for another property, and then take a portion of it and pop that into, say, a managed investment fund. So you could actually do a little bit of both with that inheritance if you're mortgage free. Otherwise, I'd kind of be possibly encouraging you to kind of clear down mortgage debt, because that's just going to open you up with an opportunity to save more, and then we can start investing quicker yourself. It's a good question.
Thank you, Shelley.
You're
That is
welcome.
all the questions we have time for today. And sorry that we can't answer everybody's questions, but we do encourage if you have any questions about our financial consultations to email us via info@enable.me or call us at the number on our website. Thank you so much for attending today. You will receive a follow-up email with the code if you didn't quite manage to scan it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.